Letter 6. These letters present knowledge which people down the ages have longed to know, but have not received since their worldly scientific knowledge was not sufficient to enable them to understand. So was it when I was in Palestine in the person of Jesus. Again and again I explained the truth of universal existence in various ways, but no one understood. As most of you must realize, I have not come to you at this time to bring you a new religion, a better moral code, or a new God to worship. Nor, like your metaphysicians, do I preach positive thinking. Your humanly conceived positive thinking, magnetizing to yourself your human needs and desires, and the means to fulfill your ambitions, only strengthens your ego drive. All things blessed and bountiful will be manifested in you and your life as and when you realize that the entire universe is transcendent universal consciousness made visible when it takes on material form through the activity of the ego. Your true purpose in your spiritual journey is to break free of the bondage of the ego and make ever more pure contact with divine consciousness. It is your eventual destiny to recognize its omnipresence both within yourself and throughout your daily activities. Your highest spiritual goal is to come to that spiritually exalted moment when you finally realize that your human mind and its desires are only finite, and therefore can never bring you the happiness and fulfillment you will experience when you lay down your selfhood and come to the divine consciousness, asking only for the higher way, more abundant life, and the true spiritual purpose, which you alone can accomplish in your earthly state. However, to help you reach this high point of realization, I am about to enlarge on the origins and functions of the ego. As I contemplate your world, I see a dimension presently controlled by ego force. Everything evil in your present decadent society, in your vast soulless cities, arises out of ego force. It is the source of every wicked, lying, perverted activity presently in operation on your planet. It controls the media, your TV, your families, nations. It is productive of all wars all over your globe. It creates a foul miasma of low consciousness energies perceivable by higher spiritual entities, but too horrible to contemplate. If your present consciousness is permeated with love of possessions and an inability to share with others, devising ways and means to become rich at the expense of others, stealing and failing to perform your work conscientiously or give good value for money, snapping, snarling, indulging in criticism, sarcasm, judgmentalism, rejection, denigration, enmity, intolerance, hatred, jealousy, aggression, violent impulses, thieving, falsehood, double and devious dealings, slander, you are ego-driven. Your ego is in control, and you will find it difficult to move through the miasma of ego consciousness to be able to see reality. For this reason, I have come through the medium of these letters to help you understand exactly what is binding you down in your present conditions, the horror of which was unimaginable by the human mind a century ago. I am now about to explain more fully the ego. At the time of your conception, during intercourse, as your father's consciousness rose via his spine ever higher to the top of his head and tension mounted toward its climax, your father's consciousness briefly touched divine consciousness, creating a flashpoint, a small explosion which he experienced as orgasm, and thereafter an injection of divine consciousness was infused in his semen to give life to the mother's ovum. The moment of union with woman and the explosion of tension in a man at the time of orgasm reenacts the time of the Big Bang, when the unity of father-mother consciousness exploded into separate energies and the first electrical particles and random matter took form. Father consciousness provided the energy of activity and momentum, and mother consciousness provided the bonding to give form and substance to the electrical particles. These are primal impulses which give life and form to man and woman. I want you to understand that creation is not a creation of matter imbued with consciousness. Creation is the visible form of primal impulses drawn and bonded into individual shapes and entities, all expressing differing facets and combination of the primal impulses in a myriad of ways. Therefore, the primal impulses are the reality which your eyes, ears, smell, touch tell you are solid matter, but are really consciousness impulses individualized in order to be experienced, intellectually understood, and appreciated emotionally. At the time of conception, when semen unites with ovum and a mating takes place, male consciousness chromosomes bond with female consciousness chromosomes. This is a physical union of your father's own consciousness of semen and your mother's own consciousness of ovum, powered by the divine. Thus do the male and female consciousness chromosomes carry the imprint of genetic DNA from both parents. The moment of physical union of semen and ovum is conducted on two levels of creativity. The injection of divine consciousness became your soul, embodied within the human consciousness union of semen and ovum. Physicality was created, powered by the father-mother life consciousness, which controlled the activity and bonding of conscious cells, producing the gradual growth and development of your physical body, which is really consciousness made visible on every level of your being, and nothing else. Your soul remained an inviolate flame, that's a metaphor, of father-mother life, deeply enmeshed within the physical drives of activity, bonding, repulsion. These became your earthly individuality and personality. Incorporated within the transcendent life impulses of divine father-mother consciousness, these consciousness impulses now took over the process of your physical consciousness creation and became the driving force behind your personality. Together, activity bonding labored to build conscious cell by conscious cell according to the consciousness specifications contained in the consciousness DNA molecules. Both personality and body are the product of these human impulses of activity, bonding, repulsion. While universal consciousness remains forever within equilibrium in the space, and therefore undetectable in that selfsame space, in frequencies of vibration, the primal impulses of activity, bonding, rejection work together in the visible dimension, appearing to your senses in the form of electromagnetism. Both universal consciousness and your soul remain undisturbed within the silence and stillness of equilibrium in space. The earthly consciousness creativity takes place within space and time and varying frequencies of vibration of materialized consciousness. Therefore, you take on living form and continue to exist within two dimensions. One dimension is unseen, the divine consciousness, and the other visible dimension is all that the living human being can sense or comprehend until spiritual development lifts its human consciousness frequencies of vibration to the spiritual plane and a glimmer of understanding enters its earthly consciousness. As this process of gradual enlightenment proceeds, the uplifted human consciousness then works consciously both within the unseen and the visible dimension. The higher the frequencies of vibration of individualized consciousness, the higher and more perfect are the forms created in the mind. The lower the frequencies of vibration, the more divorced from universal perfection of love are the forms created in the individualized mind, wholly possessed by the ego drive. The ego takes over control of your developing fetus from the time of the union of the semen and ovum. The new little being became an I, immediately feeling satisfaction and dissatisfaction in the womb, depending on its sense of comfort or discomfort and what was happening to the mother. When you were born, your instincts of survival, imprinted with the deep primeval knowledge of created beingness buried in each living cell of your body prompted you to breathe and become aware of an emotional emptiness and deprivation at your separation from the comfort of the confining womb, which was then felt as a physical emptiness and need for physical nourishment. Thus was your ego cry born. When you cried, you were given nourishment by your mother, which was deeply satisfying, both physically and emotionally. When your needs were fully met, you could slip back into a state of equilibrium within sleep. When you woke from your equilibrium, you felt a sense of insecurity, the equilibrium now divided into mental and emotional awareness. You remembered that mother and milk created a fulfillment of needy insecurity, and so again you cried. Your needs were fulfilled. So did your ego drive develop. Sometimes you cried and it was humanly decreed that it was not yet feeding time and you were left to cry for a while. This built up an awareness that needs were not always satisfied immediately and you would have to adapt. You either chose anger and cried more vigorously or lapsed into acceptance. Your choice of reaction depended on the characteristics of ego drive imprinted in your consciousness at birth. Neither forms of ego drive were to be condemned or judged. They were the natural result of the creative factor of ego, which ensures individuality. As I have explained in my last letter, ego is the guardian of individuality. If you did not have this inbuilt impulse to cry for what you want to make you happy, or reject what makes you sad, you would be in a limbo of nothingness. If you did not run when faced with danger or did not call for help when in danger, you might die. If you had not cried, demanded food, when you were born, you might have starved. If you had not welcomed mother's milk and nuzzled her warmly, you might never have developed a close, caring bond with her. Without the ego drive, there would be no creation, no individuality, no fulfillment of need, no protection, no warmth of response, and no human love. Without the ego drive, there would be no self-defense, no self-protection, no survival. However, the ego drive, primarily the I of the individual, is imprinted only with the need for self-satisfaction and survival. In childhood, the I of the ego is governed by likes and dislikes, wants and rejection of what is not wanted, and by habits formed by a constant repetition of feelings. Bad habits in the form of unacceptable ego responses to personal experiences and the environment are formed, and these are, in turn, imprinted in the unconscious or subconscious mind and remain hidden. However, they erupt into repeated behavior patterns when the memory of previous circumstances and modes of behavior unconsciously bring them to mind. Now the subconscious mind and the conscious mind begin to work together to develop the personality. Much of the behavior becomes conditioned behavior and very difficult to break. When the person is unconsciously programmed with strong self-centered ego habits of thought and behavior, and finds it difficult to live with others in harmony, that person then goes to a psychologist for help in unraveling the complexities of the mental, emotional problems. Until my truth of existence is fully understood and the life-giving principles become the consistent guidelines of habits of thought and responses to life's experiences, the pain and suffering arising from the ignorant indulgence of ego drives will persist. The Church describes this human difficulty as being a temptation by Satan. It is no such thing. It is a natural process brought about by the uncontrolled reactions to life, powered by the ego drive, whose only purpose is to bring the individual happiness and contentment, fulfillment of need, or privacy, independence, security, peace, all directed at survival. It must be understood that there is nothing evil about the ego drive. It is a necessary tool of creation. It is the individual himself who brings about the imbalances in life by allowing the ego drive full control in his personality without thought or consideration for other people. This, too, is not to be judged or criticized, since the person possessed by ego drive knows no other way to think or operate within the earthly dimension. The child knows nothing about self-control other than that taught by parents and school teachers. Therefore, the mistakes it makes in responding to life and its ups and downs can only be accepted in good spirit by parents and teachers, since the child has no understanding of what is driving him. If he wants something right away and wonders why he shouldn't have it. There is nothing more in his mind than this. He sees something he likes, he wants it. It is cruel to tell a child roughly, "No, you can't have it." His entire system is insulted and assaulted. From earliest babyhood, the training process must be initiated by logic and reassurance, affirming his right to feel secure within his environment. His sense of security should be developed by explaining the right way to express his wishes. Love, not irritation or anger, must choose the words which tell the child why he cannot have what he wants. The child will hear the message when given in love. When delivered in anger, it arouses his deepest ego drives and begins to take form as resentment, overt or hidden, or in a sense of deep-seated frustration which taints the ego, reducing the child's natural sense of inner validity. A child needs to possess this sense of personal validity and should not be subdued or destroyed. It requires parents or teachers to point out very clearly that other people in the world also have their needs, their rights to their possessions, their desire for peace and pleasure. No one, not even a child or adult, has the right to upset another person in order to obtain their own satisfaction. If another youngster hits the child and makes him cry, it is only natural for the ego drive to want to fight back. He is programmed to defend himself against the other child. It calls for parents and teachers to point out that a payback, revenge and conflict only escalates, bringing more pain to each child, and for this reason, payback is entirely pointless. Better to laugh and turn away. And rather than allow the irritation and hurt in the mind to continue, better still to take the problem to divine consciousness and prayer, and ask for the hurt to be removed from his consciousness and seek a means of reconciliation. A child should also be taught to take time to understand that he and the other child are equally children born of the divine moment. When a child is spiritually receptive and can make this procedure of recognizing his spiritual kinship with other children and all living things, and the rights of others equal with his own, into a habit, he will have been given the greatest spiritual gift possible. In such a way is the ego drive weakened by the practical daily application of inspirational love, while the central I-ness of the child remains strong and self-confident. The child should be taught the benefits of laughter, which I will describe and explain in a later letter. Therefore, skilled and insightful teaching is absolutely necessary to steer the child into an appreciation of the rights of other people, equal with their own rights. This is the spiritual law which should dominate the home and the classroom, and any other law by which to judge circumstances is faulty and lacking in balance. The best teaching will rely not on the will of the teacher, the because I say so attitude, but on a systematic reference in every circumstance to brotherly love and the equal rights of others. At the same time, a child should not be indoctrinated into self-sacrifice, since this type of caring must be willing and born only of the individual's spiritual perceptions and goals. Self-sacrifice is born of spiritual enlightenment, of a higher road to follow, of denial of the little self to remove the ego barriers obstructing attunement with the universality of divine consciousness. True enlightened self-sacrifice brings a spiritual consciousness to the heights of joy. There is no sense of loss in any form. To better describe the reality of the soul and the ego, I want you to cup your hands together, fingertips touching fingertips, and wrists together, leaving a space between your cupped hands. Your hands represent the human consciousness shell of a person, the ego. The space correctly represents the soul, born of the father-mother conscious life at the moment of your conception. While to human senses it appears to be nothingness, it is, in fact, an offshoot of the allness and wholeness of divine consciousness, out of which all created things have taken form. Your hands, with the space between, represent the I. Your left and right hands represent two potent forces of the magnetic ego drive. They represent forces of bonding rejection, but at the same time, quite rightly, they are the physical representation of the physical energies known to science as magnetism, bonding, and repulsion. Bend back your right hand from the other one and visualize that you use this right hand to get what you want out of life. It represents also what your human consciousness perceives as the grasping attitude to life. Give time to this exercise and fully realize your right hand represents the magnetic pull, the bonding, the attraction, the gravity evident in all of nature. It is the source of all wanting and desiring. It is the magnetic impulse which is always directed at getting what is necessary or greatly desired and pleasurable in life. This magnetic impulse is spiritually intended to be directed toward constructive purposes: gaining, holding, building, achieving. Were there no other people or living things in the world, the magnetic impulse could have full sway in a personality and no harm done. It is only when other people or living creatures or other people's persons and possessions have to be taken into account that the uncontrolled magnetic impulse to attract, draw, bond, hold, possess becomes a sickness of the personality if it is not equally balanced with the needs of all other living things. Return your hand to its original place, cupped with the left hand. Now pull back your left hand and visualize that this hand represents the magnetic impulse to repel, push away, slap, or defend yourself from any unauthorized encroachment on your property or possessions or any attack on your character, family, or work. This left hand represents the magnetic impulse of rejection, which is spiritually intended to ensure your privacy and save your life. It is a legitimate weapon when your physical or emotional survival is at stake, always providing you remember that your every action is an electromagnetic activity, bonding, repulsion blueprint in consciousness, which rebounds and externalizes eventually in the form of a similar attack on the self. The unpleasantness may be criticism from your parent, teacher, employer, and the words of self-defense which spring to mind and jump out of your mouth are ego words wholly given to self-defense, expressing the magnetic drive of repulsion and rejection. As your ego words of attack flare up into angry speech, so is the ego of your critic similarly threatened, and it also rises up in him or her as words of self-defense against you. What may have started out as a necessary and adult action of pointing out some error and a better way to do is frequently immediately seen by a self-centered, sensitive ego as a personal attack. What should have been a moment of growth develops into a time of conflict, anger, possibly tears, ongoing resentment, and mutual hostility. In such swift, unexpected, unnecessary ways, conflict is generated in the mind, expressed in words, even actions, and perpetuated through resentment and hatred. Remember that every activity of the mind, the mental thought, and the emotional reactions of attraction and repulsion are all consciousness energies of creativity. These consciousness energies not only create the unpleasant rebound forms, but they develop the direction of the character and even affect relationships generally and the environment. And they reduce the life vitality of the body, leading directly to a sense of physical malaise, viral infection, or long-term disease. The higher way, when under attack of any kind, a way having only constructive repercussions, is to remember you can instantly call upon divine consciousness from which you will draw instant protection in any eventuality. But this is only possible if you can move beyond the magnetic ego drive of resistance in the perfect assurance that divine consciousness meets your every need. Now return your left hand to its original position with the right hand. Realize that throughout this exercise, the space between your hands has remained the space. It has not been involved in any of the activity of the hands, and so it is with your soul when your ego is busily at work, second by second, always and forever on the alert to fulfill your needs and defend you from any unpleasantness. The divine consciousness of your soul remains hidden, although it is always within you. When I was on earth, I spoke to the people about the kingdom of heaven. I said it was within you. So it is. It is your soul. It is the haven of equilibrium of the divine consciousness which gave you being as a future man or woman. I greatly long to be able to put into your minds a broad view of your source of being, to enable you to perceive a little more clearly your beginnings, from whence you have come. You must also understand at all times that when I speak a word of description of that which is truly unknowable, I am myself standing in the very highest infinitesimal frequencies of vibration, on the very edge of the great universal equilibrium, out of which all things have drawn their being and taken on their form. If I speak of a mountain, a picture will come to your mind, but you will not know the immensity of its structure, the endurance of its rocks, its ravines and peaks and caverns, the snow which caps it in all seasons, the waterfalls cascading into pools when its glaciers melt. For you to gain a glimpse of the grandeur of the mountain, I would have to go into a detailed description of its every nook and cranny. Even after the most detailed verbal explanations, you would still have only imagined mental pictures to draw on. You would still not know the mountain. If I speak of a hurricane, I can bring to your mind trees bowing to the ground, bent by the tremendous winds, walls crumbling, rafters broken, bricks and roofs flying, windows shattered, cars overturned, great trees uprooted, but you will never know the force and the noise of that wind, the crash of falling masonry, or the terror it generates in people's hearts who have to endure it, until you have experienced it for yourself. So it is when I try to describe for you that which brought all creation into being. You can only guess, not know. It will only be after you have experienced all I have spoken about for yourself that you will begin to gain some idea of what I am trying to tell you. Therefore, let no one who reads my letters dispute with another or deny the truth of what I am teaching you, or refute my words, for I tell you truly that you cannot fully know what you have not experienced. It is only those who will follow me in acceptance and faith into daily meditation, the cleansing of consciousness, and impassioned prayer for enlightenment, who will eventually gain ever-deepening glimpses, then experiences, of what creation itself may access, divine consciousness. You may ask, what is the difference between universal consciousness and divine consciousness? Universal consciousness is the universal realm of space which none may enter or access, since it rests in a state of equilibrium and self-contained energy. Divine consciousness is the reunion of the original impulses within universal consciousness, which were released to become both the activity and the substance of creation at the moment of the Big Bang. These impulses were explosively divided, then came together in a state of mutual restraint. They were also destined to work forever in the created realm, either separately, manifested as energies, or together restrained in equilibrium. It is only this realm of divine consciousness that science may penetrate. Perhaps the following paragraph will explain this more clearly. Universal consciousness embodiment of universal impulses, the impulse of the will to create in mutual restraint with the purpose to experience itself. Intelligence in mutual restraint with the purpose of love to experience itself. The impulse of intelligent will, equilibrium, impulse of loving purpose. Having given you this intellectual word description of universal consciousness, you will not be any closer to an appreciation of the sublime magnificence and grandeur of the power, nor of the beauty, joy, harmony, ecstasy contained in color and sound beyond your dimension. It is only we who have ascended in consciousness frequencies of vibration to the very portals or edges of the equilibrium of universal consciousness who experience and can radiate the rapture of self-awareness of true potential without desiring to fulfill it, the wondrous joy of personal fulfillment without lifting a finger. I use this last term metaphorically since although I retain my individuality, I am active in consciousness only, and am in no way physical any longer, and have not been since my continuing spiritual ascension in other dimensions after my death on the cross. You may wonder how it is possible to have such enormous universal impulses within a state of equilibrium. They are in a state of equal and mutual restraint, the bonding, nurturing, love impulse, holding, binding the creative active will under control. I can only explain this phenomenon in the following simple terms. If you place the palm of one hand on top of the palm of the other, with fingertips of each hand touching the wrist of the other hand, and then try to separate them but still keep them tightly flat on each other, you will gain some idea of the meaning of equilibrium or mutual restraint. Furthermore, you must realize that although your hands are apparently expressing a physical phenomena, they are actually governed by and expressing impulses emanating from your brain. In addition, your brain may be the vehicle of expressing conscious ideas, impulses, but in fact, the impulse is the reality of all movement of any kind, not the physical brain, which is only an instrument of expression of such impulses. I have given you only an intellectual account of universal consciousness. How can I describe for you the latent power, the magnificence of reverence, the rapture, the radiant joy, the state of utter contentment and peace and harmony of its being? Even if you can contemplate and realize that, out of this immensity of consciousness, the entire universe has drawn life and form, you cannot perceive more than an electron of the vast, immeasurable, joyous reality of universal consciousness. To fully understand the nature of creation, the reasons why the ego functions as it does, why created entities feel the urges they feel, it must be understood that the nature and quality of universal consciousness is radiant joy, fulfillment, happiness. This is what I term the kingdom of heaven within you, within your soul, within the deepest recesses of your psyche, which is the intermediary between the radiance of your soul and the shadow self of ego. To return to this transcendent state of glorious, beautiful, happy, harmonious being is your soul's deepest longing. It is this enduring longing, this inborn unconscious recollection of equilibrium and peace, joy and harmony, which, through the psyche, prompts the ego to manipulate the environment on your behalf. Its consistent purpose is to bring you back to your primal original state of glorious ecstasy out of which you drew your soul, being, and form. But the ego can bring about your desired joy and pleasure only by means of the two magnetic emotional bonding rejection impulses, which are only materialized impulses to give you your individuality. Therefore, the inborn longing to rejoin the source of being is experienced in the electromagnetic parameters of thought and feeling as more of what gave you a pleasurable feeling previously. more friends, more house, cars, clothes, etc. Each time the more has been achieved, there is a little glow of satisfaction, perhaps a showing off to the neighbors to heighten the happiness, gaining one up on them, and another little glow. And then the novelty dies away. The new possession becomes mundane. The senses are again at rest, in equilibrium. Mental tiredness sets in. Routine becomes dull and boring. To generate some life, the ego finds another goal to be achieved to provide excitement and pleasure. Thus, life is an endless chase for personal satisfaction of various kinds, leaving the hidden soul starved, unsatisfied, still longing for something more. But what is it my deepest self is craving? You ask in desperation. When a person reaches an understanding of the true source of emptiness and continual inner craving for more of what made me feel good before, and begins to meditate to make contact with that which brought him or her into being, a little of the divine equilibrium filters through the human consciousness. The emptiness begins to recede. If indeed such a person catches a true glimpse of the eternal and the true goal in life, the longing for more possessions will eventually die a natural death. The desire for more possessions will be gradually replaced with a sincere appreciation of what you already have and a sense of consistent contentment. Through experiences of the miraculous interventions or activity of divine consciousness within the daily life, the human consciousness is greatly uplifted and learns that its daily needs are met in the very best way. Faith is increased and joy enhanced. This is why I have said to you, I have not come to teach you positive thinking to draw into your orbit the things you want and need. I have come to you expressly to lead you back into the kingdom of heaven. However, it is not only in the matter of desiring more possessions for yourself that your soul is bound down within its secret dwelling place. The ego also uses the magnetic emotional drive to repel, reject, to ensure your individuality, privacy, and safety. This impulse takes on numerous forms designed to give you a feeling of superiority or elitism, or protecting you from the people whom you consider to be undesirable, or having less social status than yourself. This ego drive is practiced continually and was thought to be perfectly acceptable, even by the churches. The truth is, when the soul begins to gain a little control over the ego drive, it will chide the human personality for its selfishness and exclusivity. It will urge the psyche toward the adoption of unconditional love and a belief in the universality and oneness of all people, no matter who they may be. Perhaps now you can more easily understand how and why the creation of your individuality through the medium of the ego formed the great physical impulses capsule which produced and enclosed your human consciousness, creating both your physical form and your human personality. Since it governs your mind and emotions, thoughts and feelings, it prevents you from making contact with the source of your life and your soul. Your true purpose in life is to gain mastery of your ego by reaching out in thought and feeling to that which you sense is behind creation and consistently asking for enlightenment. This is the very first step a person must take towards that glorious moment when he or she will make contact with the divine and then move forward by means of continual cleansing of the ego drive to the re-entry into that heavenly state out of which your soul was born and took its individuality. And how did this creation of individuality come about? As I said before, universal consciousness reached a high point of mutual restraint, and an explosion took place which tore apart the impulse of creative will from the impulse of loving purposes, which separated and became active within creation as Father Intelligence, Mother Love, seen as electricity, magnetism, bonding, repulsion, life, reunified in equilibrium as divine consciousness, life. Therefore, far from being solid and imponderable matter, in reality, The visible world is mind activity working always in conjunction with emotional magnetic bonding repulsion, also known as attraction-rejection. Father intelligence, physical electricity, and mother love, physical magnetic bonding rejection, together produce the child, the ego. This impulse of individuality was born and took undeviating and consistent form within the energies of creation to ensure that the various electrical forces expressed as protons and electrons and the rest of the particle gang, excitedly discovered by science, should not fly off uninterruptedly into a distant, formless state, but should be restrained and controlled by the magnetic bonding rejection impulse of mother love to bring about manifested form. Science may dispute the foregoing paragraphs, since it has been at great pains to describe the various bonding processes by applying differing word terms to the bonding energies. Science is welcome to call the bonding or attraction energies by any term they wish, but the fact remains that these energies have taken on form from the grand and primal impulse of mother love, whose primal consciousness function is to give form to individuality. The impulse of father intelligent life gives electrical momentum to creation. The impulse of mother loving purposefulness gives the bonding to restrain the electrical momentum and bring it under control within the individuality. The impulse of mother loving purposefulness gives the repulsion-rejection impulse to ensure the survival of the individuality. That is the process of creation. Science can only approach creation as a spectator. Although its ambassadors are human and experience life for themselves, the human mind can only observe what has been created. It cannot enter into the intimate processes of creation hidden within matter and the most basic fields of energy. Science will never be able to pinpoint the motivating factor X, which gives rise to the energies which are in control of the creation of individual form. But what science has to say on the matter of creation is of little moment to you as an individual. Science will not change your lifestyle, health, environment, personal feelings, and achievements one iota. What you need to know, and what I have come expressly to tell you, is how to escape the selfish, possessive, protective drive given you by the ego to ensure your individuality and survival, and your inbuilt longing to return to the joy and happiness out of which all creation took life. This provides you with the reason why I originally came to earth and am coming to you at this present time, to do something that no scientist can ever do for you. Help your soul emerge from the confines of your ego drive and embark on a new program of thought, emotional living, which will directly express the father-mother consciousness life injected into you and all humanity at the moment of conception. Because the ego itself possesses the electric momentum of activity, creativity, and the emotional magnetic impulses of bonding rejection, whatever is born of the ego drive by its thoughts, feelings, and actions is charged with physical electromagnetic life, which will produce replica life forms and will be eventually materialized within the life of the ego creator. These created forms not only manifest eventually as experiences, but also disturb the functioning of the physical processes of their creator, and are the origin of physical discomforts or viruses or disease. Therefore, it is a great cause for rejoicing when the soul emerges from its encapsulating human consciousness of the ego, for the ascending spiritual consciousness will create the harmonious life-giving conditions it holds in consciousness. Conversely, it is a cause for sorrow while the human consciousness is submerged in ego control, producing upsets, trials, and tribulations, both in life experiences and the physical condition itself. Therefore, I tell you, if you do not like your world, you have it within your power to change your conditions of existence right where you are, if you have the faith and consistent will to do so. I repeat in another form to gain your attention. If you continue in your present level of human functioning and thought, you will only experience your present level of human existence. You will be bound down to working hard for a paltry living, beset by numerous problems such as poverty and ill health, addictions, immobilized by prostrating fear, and exposed to ill-intentioned attacks of all kinds. You will be burdened by present conditions until you understand how to change them. This is your golden opportunity to take control of your lives as never before by getting control of your thoughts and emotions, your electrical and magnetic impulses, the blueprints of your future experiences. For you are like potters possessing clay and daily shaping pots and utensils for your use. Consciousness is the clay, the substance with which you make your lives and every condition pertaining to it. You alone shape your lives into the forms you experience. By your thoughts, you can change your personal future if you will but heed my words, understand your true origins, believe in them, and use this knowledge in your daily routine. You can affect your environment, your homes, families, work, the people you associate with, even plants and animals and climate. Whatever you hold steadfastly in mind externalizes. Therefore, it is crucial to your spiritual and your personal human development to fully understand all I am trying to teach you. Do not think that these letters presented to you are too difficult to understand and then move on to some more easy way of finding happiness. Believe me, there is no true and more easy way for you to find the equilibrium and happiness you seek, because my words describe the universal truth of existence and the life with which you are presently building or destroying your lives. At the same time, rest assured that you will never be able to create new conditions for yourself until you discover why and how you have been creating destructive and negative conditions in the past. Everything you are presently experiencing, you have created and set in motion by former thoughts, words, actions in the past. So do not resent your present circumstances, for you yourself have done whatever was the cause of your present conditions. Be sensible, therefore, and read these letters, and devote all your strength and will to discover the means you have used, in former ignorance, to spoil your life in days gone by. Then take the necessary steps to clean out your consciousness. You may ask, why should I clean out my consciousness? I tell you, you would never plant a field of mealies without first putting in the plow to turn the ground, and then the equipment to make a fine-textured soil and scatter the fertilizer. In ignorance, you could plant among the existing weeds in lumpy ground and omit the fertilizer, and your crop would be thin and patchy. So it is when you muddle along in your earthly self-centered thoughts and live entirely in your own human knowledge, strength, and will. You are limited in everything you do, and all unknowingly you create the very circumstances which will limit the harvest of your endeavors. The moment you realize from whence you have truly come, seek the power on which you may draw to accomplish every single thing in your life, and take urgent steps to clear out the weeds, thus purifying the soil of your consciousness. You will draw on the power which will imbue and prosper your daily experiences and activities. You could say the power is your fertilizer, but this would be completely inaccurate and false. Fertilizer is inanimate chemical food for the plant, whereas the power on which you can draw through daily meditation is the life which will invigorate your entire being, your life, even your plants and the bricks of your houses and your equipment far beyond your present belief. People who have given their entire willpower to living this truth see the undeniable fruitage in their lives, and the seeing increases their faith and determination. Thus do they enter a circle of blessedness. They marvel that other people can resist this truth and choose to remain outside the spiritual and earthly harmony in which it is possible to live. If you are prepared to listen and ponder and meditate on the following pages, you will begin to understand what has been hidden from the beginning of creation. Cleansing the consciousness. While doing all the very necessary work of mental-emotional cleansing, use my words in the foregoing pages describing that which has brought you and all the world into visible being to build up an awareness and contact with its powerful divine consciousness. Out of that contact will come the inspiration and strength to accomplish the cleansing more swiftly. As the cleansing takes place, you will experience newfound happiness and fulfillment in every area of your life. You will also receive inspired directions in regard to your daily lives, either during your meditation or like a ray of light in your mind when you are at peace and thinking of some mundane matter. If you do not discount or reject these directions but follow them faithfully and carefully, you will be taking your first steps to becoming eventually a great successful planter and reaper of creative ideas in your environment. Everything connected to you will blossom, flourish, and prosper. Everything will respond and bless you with newness of life. If you discipline yourself in meditating daily with undeviating devotion, you will eventually begin to feel a response and inflow of that which brought you into being, and the words you are using will take on new meaning. The words will be imbued with universal life. You will be filled with joy and will rejoice exceedingly because you will then know the power is real and active in your mind and life. You will come to rely ever more confidently on the power beginning to be manifested in your affairs. You will want to draw others into your state of blessed harmony, for other people will be aware of it and ask you about it. Not only this, you will be experiencing a new kind of brotherly love and will want to share what makes you happy with other people. I cannot emphasize this truth enough, this need to meditate. Since so many people give up the search and the self-discipline of daily listening before they have fully cleansed their consciousness and arrived at that state of inner purification so necessary to making perfect contact with the universal consciousness, your source of being. When you do make contact, seeming miracles happen. This is the commencement of the universal power taking on form and shape in your soul, body, mind, heart, and circumstances. I tell you truly, you may trust my words implicitly. If you persevere, there will come a moment when you actually feel the contact and know that you have made contact. You have then reached a most crucial time in your spiritual human development. For a few hours, so many souls feel uplifted and joyful, but then the daily cares intrude in their minds and they intellectualize the experience. They explain it away in human terms. Do not do this, for you will lose what you have been given. You will greatly delay your spiritual progress. If you read these words and are afraid to believe them, or believe they are foolishness, or feel you will lose prestige if you believe them, you are making a creative form in consciousness which will negate any constructive response you may have originally had to this letter. So I say to you, cherish your moments of belief. Preserve your special times of contact with that which brought you into being. Believe in them and hold them fast in your consciousness, and gradually you will move forward onto the heights of spiritual consciousness to great insight and joy. Again, I say, do not put these letters to one side. I cannot sufficiently emphasize your need to think about them. Recall what they have to say. If you cannot remember, then return and read them yet again, and yet again, and yet again, until they have been absorbed into your consciousness. The more you meditate on them daily, so will they be clarified in your mind and will come to have ever greater meaning for you. Eventually, you will find that they have been like food and drink, building up your morale and determination to help change your present conditions into those of harmony, widespread growth, prosperity, and peace. Great inspiration and joy will be yours when you come to realize that the immensity of that which brought you into being is radiant, rapturous, ecstatic power, beyond your present capacity to dream and imagine. It is reality. It is the source of being, the source of everything you see in your natural living world and in many levels of existence beyond the one you presently inhabit. When you are abundantly receiving divine consciousness into your mind, yourself, into every facet of your existence, then you will begin to see the enormous difference. You will look back at the times of stress and unhappiness and see that gradually the limitations of your life will have yielded to greater blessedness. This becomes an ongoing process in your life. Be of good heart. It is truly I, the Christ, who is reaching out to you and the world through the medium of these letters. I particularly want to impress on your minds the way I have deliberately made statements in the past pages to lift your thoughts to a higher level of consciousness, depicting the benefits to be derived from working to elevate your consciousness by ridding it of the negative traits mentioned on page 1. I want you to realize fully that I have only come to help you rid yourself of the undesirable ego-driven thoughts and emotions presently controlling your mind. I am also here expressly to encourage and help you, yes, help you, develop within your mind and heart all the love-based thoughts and emotions which will bring you into harmony with divine consciousness. It is my most urgent and loving purpose to bring you out of the gray shades of existence which you presently inhabit into the sunshine of spiritual enlightenment that awaits you when you have conquered the ego drives, become unified with your soul and Father-Mother life, and moved into harmony of unconditional love for all. Therefore, I will repeat the list of negative characteristics set out on page 1. I want you to read them carefully and watch your own reactions and feelings as you go through them slowly. Criticism, sarcasm, judgmentalism, rejection, denigration, enmity, intolerance, hatred, jealousy, aggression, violent impulses, thieving, falsehoods, double and devious dealings, slander. How do you begin to get rid of any of those you know to be a part of your consciousness? Do not be too ashamed to face up to them, since you are a human being and have been born under the influence of these characteristics of the ego. So do not be too afraid or too downcast to face up to them. Take the first step in total honesty and write them down. The second step is to take the sheet of paper and lie down and place it on your chest. Close your eyes and reach out in thought to the divine reality, your source of being, which you should now realize is your loving procreator, your true spiritual Father-Mother, which radiates unstintingly and continually and consistently unconditional parenting love. Give time to quieting your mind until you feel that you are moving beyond your own consciousness. Then ask in perfect faith and expect an immediate answer, since you are operating in consciousness, for help in removing, dissolving, overcoming the false and unnecessary rejection ego drives in all the days to come. Emotionally, you make it clear to your spiritual father or divine reality, and therefore to yourself, that you want no more of these ego negatives in your consciousness. You ask for the inspiration and strength to make every effort to avoid or deny them from that day forward. By following this course of action, you are creating a new consciousness form which now begins to infiltrate and take over your present consciousness. Your intention now becomes your reality. The former negative characteristics written on your piece of paper and taken to your spiritual father are now in a limbo of rejection in your consciousness. This conscious rejection is also the means of drawing divine power into your consciousness to help you strengthen your resolve and remembrance to discard any impulses which may erupt from the rejected characteristics. Therefore, as you can probably see, the surrender and meditation have set in motion unseen work in consciousness, of which you will probably be unaware until you later wake up to the fact that the characteristics have disappeared. I would earnestly urge you to take the paper of characteristics into meditation several times. Each time you do so, you draw into your own consciousness a further injection of Father-Mother consciousness life power into your purpose of overcoming and ridding your consciousness of unwanted consciousness forms and forces. When they have been dissolved, they will no longer draw into your circumstances the negative and unhappy shadows which plagued you before. You will be traveling a higher path to freedom. As you progress, you will come to perceive little faults of consciousness in your mind and heart which never seemed to be wrong before, and when this happens, you must go through the same procedure of writing them down and taking them in utter faith to your spiritual father. Now there is one more thing you must do to complete this rebuilding of your consciousness. In place of criticism, sarcasm, judgmentalism, rejection, denigration, enmity, intolerance, hatred, jealousy, aggression, violent impulses, thieving, falsehood, double and devious dealings, slander, you must write down on a piece of paper, in gold letters if possible, to give you a sense of beauty and glow about the attributes, the golden qualities of divine consciousness of which you want to be possessed by and to express in the future. To be in perfect harmony with your divine reality, your spiritual father, each attribute will be founded on unconditional love and will promote the highest good of others. For no longer will you seek to put others down in order to make yourself feel greater and more self-confident. Your entire consciousness will be directed to affirming other people and building up everything within your orbit. You will seek to nourish, nurture, teach, protect, maintain, fulfill the needs of others, and seek to lovingly establish order out of chaotic, mindless actions. Having written your golden aspirations on your sheet of paper, again lie down and reach out to your divine reality and ask that the beautiful impulses, the nature of the divine, may gradually spread through your mind and heart and become your own consciousness. When this happens, your soul will be like a baby chick pecking and pecking, breaking its shell to emerge into the wonder of the great big world, to be united with Mother Hen, patiently waiting for her child to rejoin her. This is how it is with me and all other Christed souls. We wait and watch and help the people who long to find out the cause of their emptiness of spirit, who set their hearts on transcending earthly occupations, whose minds are being drawn to higher purposes in life, and who dream of coming into perfect attunement with their own souls and their divine source of being. We yearn with love over the spiritual travelers more than the travelers even suspect. This means that we yearn with love over you who are reading this letter. When you are again united with your source of being, you will have achieved your true purposes on earth. You will have accomplished your true mission in eternity. And now, let your real life begin. You will have entered the kingdom of heaven. I will not tell you what qualities to write for your new consciousness. These must come out of your present perceptions of the highest and best. Again, study the divine nature of divine consciousness which I perceive so clearly in the desert and described for you in letter 1. Let this divine nature become your own nature. I want you to know that when you embark on this journey in true sincerity, I will be at your side in every eventuality. It is my dearest wish that you will come to know that I am with you and that I am sending you support and strength in your quest to become unified with your divine reality. About Christianity. I am now about to speak to you about more mundane affairs, and as you read the following pages, I want you to review what is happening to your mood or feeling of well-being. This is still an exercise in the recognition of what is happening in your consciousness as your thoughts change and you employ a new set of words. Please read the next pages very carefully, whether or not you are a professing Christian, even though you may be strongly tempted to skip them. Write down your responses, ideas, feelings, particularly any changing feelings of depression or pleasure. Make a note of the number of the page when the words begin to lighten your mood and lift you on to a higher plane of peace and happiness. This is a most important exercise, for unless you do it, you will continue to read about consciousness forever, but will never reach a deep understanding how it is the basic energy of your existence, of matter, your body and environment, your life events, your moods, and your spiritual aspirations. You will not begin to realize that consciousness is the be-all and everything in your existence and experience, unless you notice how ideas and opinions can raise or lower the frequencies of vibration of your consciousness. I want you to become more aware of the words you use in your daily lives, the quality of life they create for you, and the impact they make on others, either lifting their moods into peace and joy, or leaving them depressed and depleted. Furthermore, it is my earnest intention to reach those of you who are presently adherents of the Christian religion and are struggling with past or present religious conditioning, thus finding it difficult to extricate your perceptions from dogma, in order to move freely within the finer frequencies of vibration of higher spiritual knowledge. You may be fearing damnation if you even read these pages, and yet they have a drawing power for you, and you intuitively feel that you are reading about the truth of existence which you have not been taught by your ministers. You are torn by your pressing need to know the truth and your fear of displeasing God in whatever form you presently perceive Him to be. I, the Christ, am well aware of the distress these letters are causing to many sincere people, and I long to bring you through your disquiet to perfect peace of mind and joy. For this reason, it is an absolute necessity to first analyze your present beliefs and the origins of church doctrines before continuing to teach you the deeper truth about the nature of the universal and the nature of man himself. To fully understand the origins of Christian doctrine, you must travel back in time to the beginnings of Judaism, and there find the rationalizations of the human mind which struggle to define in words what was felt intuitively to be a probable source of being. Those of you who are struggling to free yourselves of past myths and erroneous beliefs must now come to clearly perceive for yourselves and understand the fundamental difference between church belief and the truth of existence I am presently attempting to explain to you. Until you can clearly discern the origin and form of your present beliefs, you will not be able to shake yourselves completely free of the illusions of your past conditioning within the church. You will have a foot in both camps, a dangerous position to be in. This state of mind will give rise to great mental conflict and may cause you to abandon the search and return to old, comfortable, emotionally secure religious forms which are leading you nowhere. So beware and do not allow yourselves to be intimidated by threats of displeasing God and likely damnation. The origins of a belief in a super-individual Godhead. Therefore, we will begin with a description of the origins of a belief in God, a name which meant many different things to mankind. This belief began when the ancient Hebrews walked the desert plains and questioned the origins of creation. It was imagined that in some way the source of creation must surely be a superhuman man-god, invisible and far transcendent to earthly and humankind. Some of the ancient prophets were mystically aware that the source of creation was diffuse and present in some way throughout creation and also sighted in the eternal dimension, but this mysticism was not available to the average human mind. You must also understand that despite the present seeming reality in your mind of such a God from your readings in the Bible, no one has ever glimpsed such a superhuman man-God in any form whatsoever, except perhaps Moses, who claimed he saw him in a burning bush and described himself as I am that I am. All that people have known of such a superhuman God has been derived from reading the colorful descriptions of God given by prophets during their sojourn on earth. It is a hallmark of how illusory are religious beliefs that religionists return only to the ancients for their truth, since they cannot believe that God is truly real, eternal, and equally able to speak to people in your day and age. Your ministers are terrified of any beliefs which do not meld into the old ones. They never consider, or are afraid to consider, that perhaps spiritual knowledge within the earthly dimension is evolutionary. I want you to see that a fabric of belief, a mixture of rationalizations and beliefs, has been concocted to make a web of mental, emotional security with which to enmesh and trap the minds and hearts of people. All that people are taught in the Christian faith is emotionally based and emanates from hearsay, derived from early reports of my life and death on earth. Yet these are believed fanatically. Christians are taught that God is love, and God is aware of your sin, and punishes, disciplines, rewards the doers of good, and sends misfortunes to the evildoers. This is an exact description of human activity and consciousness. Christians are taught that I, the Christ, in the persona of Jesus, died for the sins of the world. I was the unblemished Lamb of God, sacrificed to pay the price for people sinning. I made a supreme sacrifice of myself to accomplish this strange feat of payment of sin down the ages. I again entered my body after crucifixion and appeared many times in the body to comfort and teach my mourning disciples. I even ate food during my appearance to them. After 40 days, I ascended out of sight of my disciples, taking my body up into heaven. As I asked in letter 3, what would I do with a human body in heaven, in the life beyond? Because I said at my last supper with my disciples that they should remember my last meal with them by breaking bread and passing it to each other, and should each drink from the same cup of wine, and remember that my body was crucified and my blood was spilt to bring them truth of being. This incident was converted into the bizarre belief that with pomp and ceremony at the altar, my body was transferred to wafers which communicants should swallow with all due reverence. My body? What good would my body, spiritualized or not, do for the communicant? Can you see how the mind can be conditioned into accepting illogical nonsense which can endure almost 2,000 years because it was backed by a great hierarchy of pope, cardinals living in palaces, immense wealth, and upheld in earthly pomp and ceremonious prestigious circumstances? I want you to know the truth about that fateful night, what you call my Last Supper. Though painful to do so, for the sake of greater clarity, I have brought myself down in consciousness frequencies of vibration right into the consciousness recollection of my thoughts and feelings during my last meal with my disciples. Although a strong man, enlightened and certain I had a destiny to fulfill which I could not avoid, did not want to avoid, I was also deeply sorrowful as we commenced our meal, the eating of the Passover. My disciples had been my friends and had stood by me during some difficult circumstances. I was sad to be leaving them and fearful for their well-being. What would happen to them when they found themselves alone without my guidance and protection? They had depended on me more than they knew. I recalled my years of teaching the people. I felt a deep sense of irony as I remembered my return from the desert, dirty and unkempt, but literally possessed by my joyous concern for my fellow men, and intensely excited that I could now put their feet to the right path, implant in their minds the truth concerning existence, show them how to overcome their fears, their sickness, poverty, misery. I was going to conquer the world. But how differently it had all turned out. Tomorrow I would hang on a cross. It was true, however, I had achieved much success. I mused over the instances of healing and the people's joyful acceptance of the loving Father. I could understand why the high priest and the council hated me. Instead of fear, punishment, and animal sacrifices, I had brought the people the reality of the Father love, providing it by healing terminal cases. I brought my attention back to my disciples who were talking to each other while eating. They were still unaware of the challenge that lay ahead of me, my crucifixion. Although I had repeatedly warned them, they refused to accept my words as truth. They thought I had become frightened of the chief priest and wondered why. I had extricated myself from threatening situations before. As was customary at the Passover, they were speaking about the circumstances surrounding the escape of the Israelites from Egypt. John, who was highly imaginative, was giving them a colorful account of Moses, calling together the Israelites and telling them that at last they would finally leave Egypt and escape from their life of slavery into freedom in the desert. For this reason, Moses directed the head of each family to kill an unblemished lamb, and with handfuls of herbs paint the blood of it on the doorpost of their dwelling. Moses said that the angels would come at night and fly through Egypt, killing the firstborn of all Egyptians and stock, leaving only the firstborn of the Israelites, who would be saved by the blood on their doorposts. As I listened to them and saw their smiles and nods of acknowledgment of this wondrous happening, I realized with a pang of anguish how little they truly understood my descriptions of the Heavenly Father. I heard John's words concerning blood, 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 blood of the unblemished lamb, blood on the doorpost, blood of the Egyptian children and livestock. As ever, I marveled at the century-old Jewish preoccupation with blood, and briefly remembered that Abraham was even prepared to sacrifice his only son, intending to slaughter and offer him as a sacrifice because he believed God had told him to do so. I then thought of the daily animal sacrifices in the temple. To me, the entire concept of bloodletting as a way of paying for sin was an absolute abomination. But I remained silent and did not argue with the men. I realized that their minds were filled with these traditions as solid and enduring as rock. This was our last supper together, our last meal, all at one table. It should be a time of peace between us and a loving farewell. Doubly momentous for my disciples because the Passover was so sacred an event for their Jewish minds, and this I would have to accept in the spirit of love and understanding. Previously, I had not celebrated the Passover since the tradition sickened me. I preferred to go into the hills quietly to meditate, leaving my disciples to eat the Passover with their families. Because of my previous attitudes, they did not wonder at my present silence. Now I half lay, half sat, unable to relax as I usually did, tense, wrought up, compassionately warm towards my disciples, yet half annoyed with them. I wondered how I might leave these confused, somnolent followers with an effective token of remembrance, some ritual to bring back to their muddled minds all that I had tried to teach them. I wanted to shake them out of their sanguinity. As I listened to their talk about Moses and his various miraculous activities, it came to me that if they were so preoccupied with blood, then blood I would give them to remember me by. I bent over the table and picked up a loaf of bread and broke it into several pieces and said quite roughly, "I am like your Passover lamb. Pass it around, take your share, eat, and do this in remembrance of me, who has brought you the only real truth the world has ever heard. Let this bread be a symbol of my body which is about to be broken on the cross." They stopped talking and stared at me. "Go on, eat," I told them. As in a dream, they quietly took some bread and passed it around, chewing a little of it. I then picked up the large goblet of wine and I told them to drink from it and pass it round. "This wine is a symbol of my blood. I came to give you the truth about God, truth about love, but I have been rejected. My blood will flow for you." Again in silence, they drank from the goblet and passed it to the next man. Their faces were strained, but they said nothing. It was obvious that all were shaken by my words and did not like them. I knew that Judas had been given money to point me out to the chief priest's soldiers when the moment was right. I knew also that the night of the Passover was to be the night. I said to Judas, "Go quickly and do what you have to do." Judas looked at me for a long moment, and I saw the pain and indecision in his eyes. He was having second thoughts, but my time had come, and I wanted to get it over and done with. "Go," I said harshly. Judas got up and left the room. The disciples were amazed at the way I had spoken and asked what it was he was going to do. "He is going to the chief priests to tell them where to find me. They are going to crucify me, just as I have told you." I looked at the various expressions on their faces, doubt, shock, horror, with a degree of painful cynicism. Then there was an outpouring of resentful interrogation. What would happen to them? They had left home and family for me. They would be losing a life of freedom and security if I were crucified like a common felon. I said they would abandon me. They vehemently denied such a thing, but they did. I was too tired to argue with them, and I had grown so strong, so secure in the knowledge that the Father was within and with me at all times, I could afford to forgive their disloyalty. And, at the end of it all, I would be released from my body and able to ascend into the realms of light I had so often sensed, but never fully seen with earthly vision. It was a thought bringing me deep comfort and a happy sense of expectation. So I smiled at them and said, "It is good you have done what I have asked in commemoration of me, and of my death yet to come. Continue to break bread and drink wine together, remembering I have ever loved you and will remain with you in spirit until you join me where I go. Do not fear. You will be guided. You will be inspired. You will be made strong, and you will speak with clear voices. My only warning is this. In the future, much that I have taught you will be forgotten. Much that I have told you will be reasoned away by human thinking or distorted by human myths." Then there was a panic and a clamor. "How will this be?" I smiled and raised my hands. "I have told you what will happen in the distant future. Meanwhile, be true to all I have taught you, and do not doubt any word I have spoken." Then it was time to go to the Garden of Olives, the place where the chief priest's soldiers would seek me. My disciples wanted to ask more questions, but now I had reached the end of my speech with men. I wanted only to prepare myself in total silence for my ordeal, moving in spirit into a state of secure, consistent attunement and communication with the Father. We walked to the garden, and I retreated to my favorite rock. Sheltered from the wind, I sat down and pulled my cloak round me. Closing my eyes, gradually I felt myself moving into a great inner stillness of spirit and a powerful silence. Then the power itself descended and pressed in on me and possessed my mind and heart. It filled me with such supreme love that I knew I was supported and sustained in love and could retain my love for all, no matter what happened to me. That was all that mattered now that my hour had come. That is the truth behind the breaking of bread and drinking of wine in commemoration of me, my life and my teachings. And as you who are reading this letter know, all that the Father gave me to know my last night on earth has come to pass. Because I spoke of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, the Church decided at the Council of Nicene that I must be referring to three persons in one. Consequently, people pray to the Father to ask for benefits, implore the Holy Spirit to instruct them spiritually, and pray to the Son to save them from their sins. Can you begin to see how earthly and humanly conceived are these beliefs? Can you also see how emotionally based they are? Because of the emotionalism and the promise of a free trip to heaven on the heels of the Savior, the beliefs have become a humanly conceived religious structure to enshrine an empire of church within earthly empires, Rome, Austria, Spain. They have been the excuse for wholesale torture and death by burning and execution of dissidents. They have inspired wars between nations. But the spiritual perception and creativity arising out of some of the beliefs have also contributed much to the existence in the past 2 millennia. These beliefs have been the reasons for the building of cathedrals and churches, monasteries and convents, giving people a stable purpose, the ability to express their artistic gifts, and provided work for the less talented. The beliefs have also directed millions of people's consciousness toward the higher realms of beautiful thought and love. They have even been the impetus behind mysticism and enlightenment when spiritual souls have come to see the reality previously hidden by the beliefs. While this has been happening, the beliefs have also created the conditions for the development of echelons of religious superiority and immeasurable grandeur and wealth. These humanly conceived and created edifices of ego impulses are therefore, from a spiritual standpoint, entirely spurious. The truth regarding sin. It must also be understood that down the centuries, people perceived that facets of human behavior were detrimental to the welfare of others. They witnessed killing, stealing another's wife and possessions, causing much pain and grief in the community, making life difficult and at times intolerable. It was reasoned that surely this behavior must be contrary to the will of what they termed God. They gave this behavior the name of sin and termed it evil. Eventually their prophets reasoned that such aberrant behavior must emanate from an evil force opposed to God, and they called it Satan. They threatened and punished each other in the belief that sins were evil and that their God would punish man for their wrongdoing against each other. This behavior is practiced to this day in the churches. Ministers try to control people by fear. The concept of sin against Jehovah, the eternal and infinitely mighty Creator, was a clever and powerful method of controlling other people. The church beliefs are a tragic travesty of all that I tried to teach the people in Palestine. Moses first enshrined the belief in sin and punishment in the form of the 10 Commandments. Moses said that they were given to him by God, and that if the Israelites broke them, they would have to suffer the penalty. In some cases, this meant death by stoning. They were taught that by breaking the laws, the Israelites would be sinning against their God. The exact truth is, Moses went to the mountain to pray for a means by which to control the unruly Israelites. In answer to this prayer, the 10 Commandments were inspirationally given to him to help him in his task of bringing the Israelites safely through their desert sojourn with the least degree of troublemaking. Religionists are happy to accept and wholeheartedly believe in a God which reputedly instructed Moses to engage in aggressive procedures and massacres when conquering the Promised Land. A beautiful and productive land was callously grabbed from hard-working people who were slain in their thousands. This was regarded as the right thing to do, since God had promised them a beautiful land in which to settle. To this day, religionists believe that since God spoke to Moses, it must be God who decreed the ensuing bloodshed. There are many similar, horrific descriptions of war and bloodshed in your Bible considered permissible, just and right, because it was believed that God had instructed them to go to war against Gentiles. Can you not see in the history of the Jews the rampant ego drive in which even God is used to exempt them from blame? In the moment of self-aggrandizement, it became permissible and equitable to ignore the 10 Commandments and indulge in wholesale massacre. They believed no sin was involved because the killing had been ordained by God. What a God! Can you not also perceive why it was necessary for me to be born in Palestine to live amongst the Jews in an effort to help them see that their traditional beliefs and practices were all contrary to the very nature of the divine consciousness which had truly given them being? Since then, down the centuries, men have battled with the concept of sin, and many sincere people have grieved concerning the way they offend God, and they beg for forgiveness. Long ago they sacrificed animals beyond number in the Temple of Jerusalem to appease God and to hopefully escape the effects of their sinning. Since that time, innumerable books have been written on the subject, expressing grief and horror at the condition of men's souls, seeking ways to change their behavior, beating themselves with whips to torture the flesh and make it pay for its wrongdoing in thought, words, and deeds. And many of these books have been applauded by the Christians throughout Europe and housed within the archives of religious institutions. They bind people to my age-old persona of Jesus preaching the salvation of man from punishment for his sins by my death on the cross. As I have explained elsewhere, these beliefs are physically impossible and contrary to the facts of creation. No payment is extracted for sin by any superior deity. This is a human concept entirely, and pagan. All bloodletting of any description for the purpose of religious rites is paganism. The Christian Church has presented its followers with nothing less than a glorified version of paganism. When people make other people unhappy in any way, they are creating their own future comeback, not as retribution, but as a consciousness activity of creation. Therefore, it is a matter of urgency that these beliefs in sin and salvation by my death on the cross should be strongly combated and replaced by the spiritual understanding given you in these letters. Before leaving the subject of religious doctrines, I want to make it clear that some spiritual seekers within the Christian Church down the ages have sufficiently purified their consciousness to become strongly aware of power they call God, and have come to recognize that the source of being is not as taught by the Church. But only a few people have been sufficiently spiritually evolved to move beyond the parameters of religious beliefs, to feel the full inflow of power, since the vast majority of people can only conceive truth within an earthly terminology. I, the Christ, have to tell you that to this time, not one of all the saints has even glimpsed the reality of creation and the truth behind human behavior, as I am presenting it to you now. The time has surely come when you must now be told the truth concerning sin and human behavior and what people are presently doing to the world and to themselves, providing you have fully abandoned the age-old myths of religious doctrine and are presently eager, receptive, and gladly opening your hearts completely to the realities of existence. If you are none of these things, then what I have to say will have no meaning for you. Believe me, you cannot mix your old religious beliefs with the truth of existence. If you try to do so, you may be sure you are not seeing truth, but only your own adaptation of what you believe you have gained from these pages. If you continue the search for truth of existence but remain in a divided state of conviction, you may continue the search at great cost to yourselves, torn by indecision, fear, and a continuing inability to perceive the true meaning of the new teaching. Your developing perceptions will be partially obscured by messages arising out of the old conditioning of your conscious and subconscious mind. You may not realize the enormity of such a problem at this present time, but it is a tremendous problem because your present deep beliefs are your present truth on which you construct your daily lives. They are your reality. Your convictions and strongly held beliefs may be completely illusory, but if you fully believe in them in your subconscious, they become absolutely real for you. No matter how compelling of your attention may be any new ideas contradicting your beliefs, your consciousness will be split and will give you enormous discomfort, even anguish to you. Remember, your consciousness is the fabric out of which you make your lives. This consciousness fabric is the ground of your every response to every single thing which happens in your mental, emotional, and physical lives. Your consciousness is your reality. This statement may be expressed in two ways, both of which are the truth of your existence. Your consciousness creates your reality irrespective of what the actual facts of your earthly life may be. When people believed the earth was flat, they were afraid to venture too far over the ocean, lest the ship should fall over the edge. The people who believed in a flat earth lived according to that belief. When Galileo said the earth was round, he was considered a heretic, but his perceptions of the roundness of the earth enabled sailors to take a new look at the world and set out to discover what lay on the other side of the ocean. It required a change in their belief to make this possible. You are in a similar position in regard to these letters. Those people who discount and ridicule them are like the people who believed in a flat earth and were afraid of falling over the edge if they sailed too far to the west or east of their known environment. Their horizons were severely limited by their false beliefs. So are the horizons of those people who believe the world to be solid, also severely restricted. Day after day, they lament and grieve over the misfortunes which have befallen the world, believing there is no escape from them. But the people who can grasp and welcome the truth of consciousness I am presently giving the world are like those who perceive that travel on the oceans could be limitlessly undertaken in all directions, providing they had the will to set out on such a journey. Therefore, your state of consciousness is the most important consideration in your life, not your relationships or possessions or your position in life. Tend to your consciousness, and the blessedness in all aspects of your life will follow. By your consciousness, you feed yourself with inner love and harmony, joy and beauty, even in the back streets of a slum. With such a consciousness, you will find yourself being removed from the streets of the slum into an environment in keeping with your inner self. So do you climb out of unpleasant circumstances. From the foregoing, you should now be able to see that only you create the quality of your internal world, whether you find yourself externally in prison or in command of a battleship. And you can enhance your surroundings by radiating to them the life force which animates your thinking. And again, your consciousness is your reality, not your husband or wife, children, home, garden, possessions, qualifications, workplace, friends. For whatever place your people and your possessions occupy in your consciousness, good or evil, this place is only your personal perception of them. The reality of these people is not truly known to anyone. No one has access to the innate goodness hidden in an apparently negative character. Conversely, no one may suspect the hidden drives and desires of a seemingly personable human being. Your external life only impinges on your consciousness. It does not, cannot, create or determine your conscious responses. You are the creator of your responses. Your type of creation depends entirely on your deepest perceptions and beliefs regarding existence. Furthermore, you can, at any moment, choose to gradually dismantle your past inner world in order to create a more harmonious inner kingdom of increasing love, vitality, and joy, although your outer objects, people, or possessions remain the same. The spiritual power of the fabric of your consciousness will be radiated outwards and absorbed by the people, plants, bricks and mortar in your immediate vicinity. There will be definite changes and improvements in all that comes within your orbit. It is your destiny in this life, or future lives, to arrive at this full and complete realization. When you do, you will put your foot to the path of self-mastery, and then gradually move forward to becoming a true master of your human consciousness world, interpenetrated and assisted by divine consciousness. I, the Christ, commend this letter to you. I have put you in full possession of some of the important facts of creation which will enable you to transcend the ego, the guardian of your individuality, and to return to the universality of being from which you have really come. You have within your hands the means by which you can move into unconditional love, joy, and personal fulfillment. Remember that I have said that I yearn over the spiritual traveler's progress. As you move along the path I have outlined for you, there will be times of confirmation that I am indeed with you on your journey. You will see them, retain your faith in them. At all times I uphold you in divine love, for I am divine love in action. Believe this and find rest in my consciousness enfolding you.